I'll never in my life ever interview another killer like that in my career.
He suggests his motive is just killing. There was something in him that liked to kill, and unfortunately, he was very good at finding potential victims.
At first, the FBI didn't believe him. Samuel Little claimed he'd murdered 93 people. It sounded impossible, an exaggeration, or worse, a lie. But then, one by one, the pieces started to fit. Now, federal agents say they do believe him. And they've confirmed what once seemed unthinkable. Samuel Little is the most prolific serial killer in American history. Even more disturbing than the body count are the sketches, hand-drawn portraits of women he said he killed, drawn entirely from memory. He remembered their faces, their hair, sometimes even the color of their eyes. But their names? In many cases, he never knew them. And decades later, no one else does either. The FBI released the drawings, hoping someone, somewhere, might recognize a face. One he called Mary Ann. He said he killed her in Florida, back in 1972.
Tell me about Mary Ann.
She's what you nowadays they call a transgender.
She's a black male dressed up as a female. Okay, how tall is she?
Mary Ann's about 5'7", 5'6". She weighed about 135.
Okay.
Maybe 140.
And how old do you think she was?
But she was 19.
Okay. And where was she from?
No, Miami, down in Liberty City.
Okay. And did she, you'd mentioned before she had a boyfriend, or she talked about a boyfriend?
Named Wes.
Wes?
Yeah.
And tell me about where you met her at.
I seen her down at the Guar on 17th Avenue, and she had on a short cream miniskirt.
Mm-hmm.
Cream and red. So then this opportunity popped up.
Mm-hmm.
Take her to the store.
Right.
Instead of me bringing her back to the apartment, I went down 27th Street. That's going down to Fort Lauderdale, called the Alligator Alley. It runs into the Alligator Alley.
Right.
But the further out you get, the further you get out of Miami.
Right.
And you got vegetation.
Now, how far outside of Miami do you think you were?
It wasn't too far to Miami, right there. I was in my stepdad's car, Pontiac Le Mans.
Now, where'd you take her to?
Continued down 27. Got back on 27.
Going outside of Miami. Okay.
Miami.
Going away from Miami.
Going away from Miami. We got down past the let's say limits. So I continued on toward Fort Lauderdale, and I seen a road going.
Another was found dead in Kentucky in 1984.
Hey, tell me about Northern Kentucky, the girl that you met in Columbus. So you meet this girl, I guess you're at a strip bar downtown Columbus.
I went on my car, and this white girl come out behind the building. And I'm in my trunk. She walked over to me, say, come on, y'all, can you take me to Miami?
Describe this girl to me. She white, black, what she look like?
She was white, blonde hair, dishwater blonde, they go. It's short.
Short, like shoulder length,
Yeah,
or
no, ear length, a little over his ear length.
like a bob?
Yeah, like a bob.
Okay, and how tall do you think she was?
She was about 5'7".
How much do you think she weighed?
She weighed about 130.
How old do you think she was?
Oh, she was about 25.
Okay. You mentioned before that you said she kind of had like this hippie aura to her.
Yeah, she did give you a hippie feeling. I think she was some kind of hippie, yeah.
So you go to Cincinnati, you mess around on Vine Street, and then eventually you guys both get in your car and you cross over the bridge into Kentucky. Tell me about going into Kentucky.
We got to Covington, and then we continued through Covington. And there was a park that they were having a festival there. And she heard the music and shit off that band in there. And by her being a hippie type, she wanted to get to that. But the police came over and peeped in in our car. He really wanted me to move out of there. So we, instead of going in there, I took her the other way.
Right.
Winding around, they got hills out in Kentucky, and the road winds around the hills. I seen a little short road going up the hill, and up top there was vegetation, wasn't no houses or nothing. And so I pulled up in there and concealed the car in that little vegetation up there on top of the hill.
So tell me about this road that goes up the hill. What kind of road is it?
It was like a dirt road.
Okay.
It was like dirt. The grass was growing in the middle between two tracks. When I left her up in that little road up there, on the side of that little road, she was like partially concealed by the vegetation. And I left her there.
A third. He said he met her on the streets of Las Vegas. She never made it to 1994.
Las Vegas. Describe the Las Vegas victim.
That was in '93.
Okay.
I bought a Eldorado.
What color Eldorado?
It was a yellow.
Okay. Yellow Cadillac Eldorado.
Yep.
All right. What year?
78.
Okay. Well, tell me about this girl. What does she look like?
She was kind of thin, dark skinned, about 40 years old when she was out there hustling. I think she was a drug addict because she would have been out there.
How tall was she?
She was about 5'5", 5'3".
And how much do you think she weighed?
She weighed about 110, 120.
Okay. What about her did you know?
The boy came, that was her son. And she called him over there. And he came over, hey, he shook my hand and everything. Yeah.
Now, how old was he?
He was about 20 or about 19, 20.
Okay, black male or?
Black male.
And where were you at when you met her?
It was on Owens Avenue.
Okay.
Owens, that's down in the black section. Owens and Jackson.
Where do you eventually take her body to?
I was headed toward California. So as I drove out of Las Vegas, I seen a motel and a road leading up to the motel. And there's a lot of bushes and brushes us beside the road before you got to that motel. That's where I dropped, pulled up her body out and rolled it down there. And I heard a secondary roll of noise. That meant she was still rolling.
So you basically roll her into a pretty big ditch that's got a bunch of...
Well, it wasn't a ditch, it was a slope.
Okay.
That didn't look like a slope because the vegetation had grown up out of the slope and looked like you would think that the road would just be flat. But actually the road was going down a slope like. And that's why she rolled.
So this is a slope right off the road?
Yeah.
Okay. And tell me about how far do you think you were outside of Las Vegas?
The road I was on was going towards Searchlight. So whatever the name of that road is, that's the road I was on.
How far outside of Las Vegas do you think you were? Were you in Las Vegas? Or?
I was still in Las Vegas, yeah.
Okay.
But I was on the very outskirts.
All right.
The very outskirts. There was a couple of motels I remember, gas stations and everything. It was scattered, because it was getting thin population as you go further out.
The murders stretched across 19 states. Over 35 years. And yet, for most of that time, no one noticed. Samuel Little was already serving 3 life sentences in California when detectives first started listening closely. The more he talked, the more they realized, these weren't just stories. His descriptions were eerily precise. Locations. Vehicles. Clothes. The motive? If there was one, it was buried somewhere beneath layers of cruelty. One detective put it simply, he liked to kill. And he knew exactly who to target, women society often overlooked. Many were dismissed as drug overdoses or written off as accidental deaths. Some were never reported missing. Others have still never been found. Today, the FBI is asking for the public's help. A mix of DNA, archived police files, and Little's own words have confirmed the scale of his crimes. But the full story? It's still unfolding. And the question remains. How did a man who killed so many stay invisible for so long? And worse. How many more are still waiting to be found? Before we move forward with this disturbing story, please take a moment to comment below with the city you're watching from. Also, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel to help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and share it with others. Stories like this must be heard, so we can help prevent future crimes and tragedies. Thank you. So, in 2018, a 78-year-old drifter, already serving multiple life sentences, told the FBI he had something to confess. Not one murder. Not 5. Not 10. 93. Dozens of women, across decades, across the country. Most of them forgotten. Most of them still unidentified. The FBI has confirmed murder case number 60, out of the 93 murders claims of the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history. This makes his case too far from closed even after his death. Samuel Little confessed to 93 murders. 60 have been confirmed. He died in prison in 2020. But now, something unexpected has surfaced. New information. New murder case. New questions. And a growing list of families who believe their loved ones were among his victims, but never made it onto the official record. Because for all the headlines, for all the sketches, and all the televised confessions, there's still a missing chapter in the story of America's most prolific serial killer. How did he remember every face so clearly, but forget their names? Why did it take decades, dozens of arrests, multiple states, and the deaths of nearly 100 women, before anyone realized what he really was? And the most unsettling question of all. Did he really tell us everything? Because just recently, investigators reopened cold cases they once thought were unrelated, cases that match Little's pattern, but were never tied to him. In this documentary, we dig deeper than the headlines. We go beyond the numbers. And we uncover the truth behind the man who slipped through the cracks of the justice system for over 3 decades, while the bodies piled up. The victims had names. They had lives. And many of them still haven't been identified. This is the real story of the man who murdered 93 women. And it's not over. For nearly 50 years, Samuel Little had been hunting women across the country. And no one noticed. He slipped through the cracks, again and again. Wrong arrests. Wrong assumptions. Victims ignored. Entire cases dismissed. And the most chilling part? He knew he wouldn't get caught. He counted on that. He said, they didn't care about them, so I knew no one was coming. But what Samuel Little confessed next would break the record books, expose decades of failure, and change everything we thought we knew about serial killers. This is the story of the women he took, the system that let him do it, and the terrifying question that still haunts America today. How many more are out there who were never found? It began with a routine arrest. September 2012, Louisville, Kentucky. Samuel Little, 72 years old, was picked up at a homeless shelter on a narcotics warrant out of California. No headlines. Just another drifter with a long rap sheet. But what investigators didn't know, what no one knew, was that this arrest would unravel one of the most staggering criminal cases in American history. Little was extradited to Los Angeles. Standard procedure. Upon arrival, authorities ran his DNA through the system. The results linked him to 3 unsolved murders from the late 1980s. 3 women, Linda Alford, Guadalupe Duarte Apodaca, and Audrey Nelson Everett, had been beaten and strangled. Their bodies dumped in alleys and dumpsters. Cases long gone cold. How does a man connected to 3 cold case murders fly under the radar for decades? In 2014, Little was convicted of those 3 murders. He received 3 consecutive life sentences. Case closed, it seemed. But the story was far from over. In 2018, Texas Ranger James Holland, a seasoned investigator, took a particular interest in Little. Holland suspected Little's crimes extended beyond the 3 known victims. He initiated a series of interviews with Little, aiming to uncover the truth. What Holland uncovered was beyond anyone's imagination. Over 700 hours of interviews, Little confessed to 93 murders spanning 19 states over 35 years. He provided detailed accounts of his victims, their appearances, and the circumstances of their deaths. How could a man commit so many murders without detection? Little targeted vulnerable women, often sex workers or those struggling with addiction, believing their disappearances would go unnoticed. He was meticulous, leaving little evidence behind. His transient lifestyle and use of aliases made tracking him difficult. The FBI confirmed Little as the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history, with 60 of his confessions verified. How many more victims remain unidentified? Little's confessions have led to the reopening of numerous cold cases. His detailed recollections have provided closure to some families, but many victims remain unnamed. The search for justice continues. What does this case reveal about systemic failures in law enforcement? Little's ability to evade capture for decades highlights significant shortcomings in the criminal justice system, particularly in protecting marginalized communities. It raises critical questions about how such failures can be addressed to prevent future tragedies. They weren't just numbers. They were mothers, sisters, daughters. Many of their names, until recently, weren't even recorded. A look into a few of Little's cases that are confirmed. Case number 1, Denise Christie Brothers. In February 1994, Denise Christie Brothers vanished from Odessa, Texas. A month later, her body was discovered in a vacant lot. She had been strangled. For years, her case remained unsolved. It wasn't until Samuel Little's confession in 2018 that the truth emerged. He provided details only the killer would know, leading to a guilty plea and another life sentence. Case number 2, Unidentified Woman, Miami, 1970s. Little recounted meeting a woman named Emily in Miami during the 1970s. She was approximately 23 to 24 years old, stood 5 feet 6 inches, and weighed around 130 pounds. He described her as a fine little pretty yellow girl who worked as a prostitute. After meeting at a bar called the Pool Palace, they drove down Highway 27 into the Everglades. An argument ensued, leading to her death by strangulation. He left her body on a trash pile, covered with a discarded mattress. Case number 3, Melissa Thomas. In January 1996, 24-year-old Melissa Thomas left her home in Opelousas, Louisiana, to buy cigarettes. She never returned. Her body was later found in a cemetery, face down, with signs of strangulation. For over 2 decades, her family sought answers. In 2018, Little confessed to her murder, providing specific details that matched the crime scene. Her family finally received the closure they had long awaited. This systemic neglect allowed Little to continue his crimes undetected for decades. Despite his numerous confessions, several of Little's victims remain unidentified. He provided sketches and descriptions in hopes of aiding identification, but many families still lack closure. The FBI continues to seek public assistance in matching these confessions to missing persons cases. The investigation into Little's crimes is ongoing. Law enforcement agencies across the country are re-examining cold cases, hoping to connect the dots and bring justice to the victims and their families. Each new confession sheds light on the breadth of his crimes and the systemic failures that allowed them to persist. Samuel Little's confessions have unveiled a tragic narrative of overlooked victims and systemic shortcomings. As the search for justice continues, it's imperative to remember and honor those whose lives were lost and to ensure that such oversights never happen again. For over 4 decades, Samuel Little traversed the United States, leaving behind a trail of victims. His transient lifestyle, combined with systemic shortcomings, allowed him to evade capture. But how did he manage to kill across 19 states without detection? Texas Ranger James Holland, known for his skill in eliciting confessions, approached Little differently. He built rapport, avoiding traditional interrogation tactics. Little began to open up, revealing details of his crimes with uncanny precision. Little's memory was remarkable. He could recall specific details, like the color of a victim's toenail polish or landmarks near crime scenes. He even created detailed sketches of his victims, aiding in their identification. Despite these confessions, many victims remained unidentified. The lack of initial investigations, misclassified deaths, and societal biases contributed to this. However, advancements in forensic technology and dedicated investigators have since identified several victims, providing closure to their families. Samuel Little's case underscores the importance of thorough investigations, the need for national databases, and the dangers of societal biases. It serves as a reminder of the victim's humanity and the systemic changes required to prevent such tragedies in the future. Samuel Little was arrested over 100 times across 19 states. Yet, for decades, the full extent of his crimes remained hidden. How did a man with such a lengthy criminal record evade detection as America's most prolific serial killer? Born in Reynolds, Georgia, in 1940, Little's early life was marked by instability. Raised primarily by his grandmother in Ohio, he claimed his mother was a teenage prostitute who abandoned him. From a young age, Little exhibited violent tendencies, including fantasies about strangling women. As a teenager, he collected true crime magazines that depicted women being choked, foreshadowing his future crimes. Little's criminal activities began in his teens, with arrests for breaking and entering. Over the years, his offenses escalated to include assault, rape, and murder. Despite numerous arrests, he often avoided serious consequences, partly due to the lack of a centralized criminal database and the marginalized status of his victims. Between 1970 and 2005, Little confessed to killing 93 women, primarily through strangulation. Many of these cases were initially ruled as overdoses or accidental deaths, allowing him to continue his killing spree unchecked. In 2012, a DNA match linked Little to 3 cold case murders in Los Angeles, leading to his arrest. Little's case highlights systemic failures in the criminal justice system, including the lack of coordination between jurisdictions and the devaluation of victims from marginalized communities. It serves as a stark reminder of the importance of thorough investigations and the need for systemic reforms to prevent such tragedies in the future. Little died in December 2020 at the age of 80, before he could be tried for the majority of his confessed crimes. His death left many families without the opportunity for justice in court. The case of Samuel Little serves as a stark reminder of the importance of thorough investigations and the need for systemic reforms to prevent such tragedies in the future. Samuel Little's death closed a chapter on one of the most terrifying serial killing sprees in American history. But even after his passing, the questions continue to haunt us. He confessed to 93 murders. 60 have been confirmed. Dozens more remain unsolved. Yet, even more chilling than his confessions is the reality that, for decades, Samuel Little walked among us, hiding in plain sight. His ability to evade detection wasn't due to genius, it was the result of a system that allowed him to slip through, unnoticed and unchallenged. Little didn't just kill. He played the system, used its flaws to his advantage, and relied on the very indifference that society had toward marginalized communities. But Little didn't just leave behind a trail of bodies, he left behind a legacy of horror. He exposed the cracks in a justice system that failed to see him for what he truly was. For years, he moved across the country, from state to state, racking up crimes and eluding authorities. Local police, federal agencies, and the public all missed the red flags. And in doing so, they allowed a monster to operate freely. It wasn't until he was finally arrested in 2012 that the investigation into his crimes began to take shape. By then, Little had already taken a staggering number of lives. He'd been arrested over 100 times for everything from petty theft to assault, but never for murder. How could this man have slipped through the cracks so many times? How did the system fail to connect the dots, even as he moved from city to city, from state to state, killing without remorse? In 2018, as the FBI launched what they called the Little Project, they started to release details of his confessions and drawings, renderings of women he claimed to have killed. These sketches, drawn from memory, were eerily detailed. And yet, despite his shocking admissions, many of the cases still remain unsolved. Many of his victims' names were never discovered, leaving their families in limbo, still searching for answers. Samuel Little didn't just leave behind a gruesome legacy, he left behind a warning. The horror lies not just in the crimes he committed, but in the fact that he got away with them for so long. How many more killers are hiding in plain sight? How many victims never received justice because the system simply didn't look close enough? The chilling truth is that Little was just one man. A man who exploited every gap in the system, using it to his advantage. And he was far from the only one. The FBI's Little Project wasn't just about solving cases, it was about revealing how the system had been blind to the suffering of countless victims. It was a stark reminder that, when society chooses to look the other way, horrors like this can go unnoticed for decades. It's a reminder that for every case solved, there may be dozens more lurking, forgotten, in the shadows. And the hardest part? Many of those shadows still linger today. How many more like him have we missed? That's the question that keeps us awake, long after the headlines fade. Because for every name that gets linked to Little, for every victim identified, there are still dozens who never made the news. And they remain out of sight. What would we see if we just looked closer? The chilling truth is that we might find more than we ever imagined. For the families who still wait, the story isn't over. The FBI still wants your help. Because somewhere, someone still remembers her name. In the end, silence protected a killer. But now, the silence is broken. If you found this case disturbing, important, or thought-provoking, subscribe to Crime and Tragedy Watch to complete our first 1,000 subscribers. Share this video. You could help identify another lost soul. And tell us in the comments, do you think justice was ever truly served? At the end of this chilling documentary is a disturbing true crime story, even more chilling than this one. Stay tuned and stay safe. Thank you.